Hello, friends. Welcome to the Cold War Prepper, and this is Tuesday evening nonfiction book club. So it appears right now we just have Sue Me on here. So it was great to hear you made it home safe. Sue Me is from Canada and was visiting down in Ohio area and drove home as we were working last night on our civics and U.S. government class, and made it home safely about 2:30, 3 o'clock this morning, her time. So that was a tough evening for her. We missed you, but very, very happy that you made it home safe. Little Lone Prepper, good evening. Welcome. I've got some pecans in my mouth right now. I'll have to wash those down here shortly. Been a rather strange day, I guess. Not that much accomplished, but not that much non-accomplished. I've been looking. I had an old. I wanted to do that video on telling time in a post-apocalyptic world. I'm surprised y'all haven't complained about the sound of these two clocks on the table here for the last month or so. My wind-up clocks have been keeping track of how much time they've gained, and so that's these red numbers here in my journal. Let me see if I can get it here. Yeah, so if you see here, that's what time I took the reading, and then how much ahead or behind each clock is from where it should be at that point in time. Just trying to get a handle on if an EMP or a CME were to strike and I lost my battery-operated or electronic watches and clocks, how accurate will my wind-ups be? And so I'm trying to just get that ready just in case anything does happen. So that's just another one of those little things that we got to take into consideration as we're doing this. And then have a battery-operated one. I plugged the battery in for the video and then disassembled it and put it back in the Faraday cage. Well, I've added it to the Faraday cage. Probably a little bit of overkill. It probably would not be susceptible to anything with the battery out. But, just want to make sure that I have something to tell time. This watch is a battery-operated. It's a Swiss Army watch, same as the Victorinox, same company that makes the Swiss Army knives. And then I have a wind-up watch, and then I have a self-winding watch. All you have to do is move your arm. And it's got this little pendulum in it, I guess, that it moves and winds it for you. So kind of interesting stuff. Oh, Little Lone Prepper, absolutely. Yes, you are very, very important to us. So, yes, we definitely want to pray for your safety and make sure that you make it there and back. And you're a very important part of this channel. So we could not have anything happen to you. Just like Sumi and Utah Mike, welcome. Good evening. Utah Mike, listen. Here's life's realities. We all make mistakes, and so the key to that is understanding and then finding a way for it not to happen again. So no, don't worry about it. You made a mistake. You fessed up. We got it fixed. I don't think there were any hard feelings. So I definitely don't hold anything against you, and thank you for coming back. I greatly appreciate that. It was an accident, not a screw up. Okay, so we can be a little bit. One time in confession, I guess Father High kind of got upset that I keep confessing the same thing over and over again, and he said, Lee. God has forgiven you. It's time for you to forgive yourself. And so, sometimes that's kind of a thing that we do is we hold ourselves accountable and overburden ourselves with guilt. And we've forgiven you, Utah Mike. Everything is good. Everything is good. Oh, wow. Okay. At least you have a garden. That's good news. Anybody else new here? Let me see. We have 7 people on and a couple hiding. But tonight we're Tuesday night, next to the last week that we'll be discussing food storage for preppers, David Nash's book. And we're condensing this down to 13 weeks. It's a 52-week program. And so there are 52 projects, things you learn to help you with prepping. There's also 52 weeks worth of accumulation of food. And if you follow the plan of what you'll be doing for the food, then at the end of that 52 weeks, you'll have a 10-month supply of 1,000 calories per person per day for 2 people. So, it's pretty important that you come up with some sort of a plan. This is as good as any other plan that I've come across. The LDS has a plan that is also very good. Doesn't have quite this variety, but it is a good plan. Speaking of which, for this week, you should have acquired 50 pounds of wheat or flour. So one of the things I went out and got this morning after my morning breakfast was I picked up a package of this. That ought to be that. Well, it's not going to count for a full pound. I don't think it's a third of a pound, 6 ounces. But little things like that count towards the wheat and flour requirement. 6 pounds of macaroni, 20 pounds of sugar, and 5 cans of cream of mushroom soup. So that's what we should have gotten for this week. In preparation for next week, the final week, we'll get 5 pounds of honey, 20 pounds of sugar, 8 cans of tomato soup, and 50 pounds of wheat. So when this is all over, the whole plan, what you will have accomplished is 500 pounds of wheat, flour, 100 pounds of sugar, 40 pounds of powdered milk, 12 pounds of salt, 10 pounds of honey, 5 pounds of peanut butter. I still have not tried that instant peanut butter that I bought. I need to try that. 45 cans of tomato soup, 15 cans of cream of mushroom soup, 24 cans of tuna, 14 cans cream of chicken soup, 21 boxes of macaroni and cheese, 500 aspirin, 1,000 multivitamins, 6 pounds of yeast, 6 pounds of shortening, and 12 pounds of macaroni. And then, of course, when you have things like the macaroni, you want to get some of that, what is it called, Velveeta and things like that, so you can make macaroni and cheese. So there's all kinds of things you can add to it and make it really a little bit better of a lifestyle. Listen, there was a really good video today by Steve Smith in Integrative Preparedness. And he was talking about, are you planning to survive, to thrive, or basically are you just giving up and going to die? And it was a really great discussion. I think if you do the bare minimums like this, you're planning to survive, okay? And then you're going to be just barely be getting through. And I commented, I said, there are 2 authors. One of them is Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he says that all of us want to do more than just survive. And then, of course, you have Abraham Maslow, Dr. Abraham Maslow, who wrote The Hierarchy of Needs. And he wrote about his existence in a stalag in the war period, and how the other people who were in there with him, he watched them disintegrate. And those who were at that base level of just day-to-day survival had no will to survive, but it was the ones who transcended that and moved up a step and said, okay, I'm going to take a piece of this bread. I didn't get enough bread to eat today, but I'm going to set aside a little piece for tomorrow. And those who always put a little crumb of bread or a little bite of bread underneath their pillow and had something extra for the next day, those are the ones who survived with greater zest for life. They thrived, basically. Thrive is not a good word here. They existed on a slightly higher plane than those who are just day to day. Give me what you have for today, and so that's one of the things we have to take into consideration. Is this is going to give us the bare minimum. This is going to help you survive, but it's better than what most other people are going to have. I was also reading Selko Begovich's articles today, and I was just rereading some of them. There's over 9 pages of just lists of PDF discussions that Soko Begovic has done. He's the one who survived 1 year in hell in the Bosnian conflict, and was living with his family and the things that happened there. And we've got to plan to do more than just survive. We've got to plan on, and that's why when you see my prepper hauls, my pantry hauls, you'll notice that occasionally I might have a can of peaches and some flour so I can do a Dutch oven cobbler. Or this week, this had been in the pantry since March of 2022. And so we figured we'd go ahead and cycle that out and see how it is. This was the only one we had that we had purchased. And this is 4 years old, no, 2 years old. It's 2 years old in a month. And we cooked it and it was fantastic. And I said, we've got to get more of those. So after my men's group this morning, I went by Walmart and I picked up 2 more boxes of that. And then I'll go out and look for some more tomorrow at the other Walmart in another town. But we just want to have things that take us that one level up where we can celebrate life. We have something that's giving us a little bit more than the bare subsistence of living. And so I encourage you as you do your preparations for the inevitable, do more than just rice and beans. Maybe a little bit of cinnamon, maybe a little bit of Montreal steak seasoning. Do something to kind of enhance it and give you something. And I saw somebody say joie de vivre, and yes, joie de vivre, and make sure you have some of that. That's French for the joy of life or enjoying living. And not that I know that much French. Now, if you want to do it in Latin, we can try that. Let me catch up with the comments up here, and then we'll get into the 4 projects for this week, and then we'll have a little bit of an open discussion. So Utah Mike has a road trip, or he loves a road trip. And then Garden Girl 84 joined us. Hello, good evening. Welcome. Good to see you. Holly Ivans, welcome. Good to see you. Holly was on with us here a couple nights ago, and that was quite a pleasure to have that happen. Let me see here. Utah Mike has a trip planned in July. Oh, which reminds me, in June 15th, for those of you who are here in the Central Texas area, I'm renting a pavilion up in Georgetown on the San Gabriel River, and I'll be presenting 2 classes. So one's going to be about 15, 20 minutes. I'll have a static display where I'll show a wide variety of different water collection, purification, and storage techniques. And then everybody will cook their own lunch. We'll have a grill or 2, and then maybe even an open pit grill. We can do some cast iron cooking. And then the next session after lunch is going to be on field sanitation. So basically how to dispose of human waste as well as how to dispose of your trash in a post-apocalyptic world. So if you're in the greater Central Texas area and you can make it to Williamson County, the county seat for Williamson County on the 15th of June, please feel free to join us. Send me an email and I'll give you all the details, okay? And that's coldwarprepper@outlook.com. Let me see. Triple G, welcome. Good evening. Theoxerus, good evening. Welcome to you too, sir. Shenanigans, good evening. Good to see you. Okay, so let's get into the 4 projects here. Not that exciting. One of them I think is kind of exciting because it's kind of a miniature cooler made out of terracotta pots. Terracotta pots. So the first one is a beeswax food wrap. Basically, this is kind of how they created wax paper, if you will. But this is using beeswax and cotton or muslin. You're going to you're going to scrape the beeswax, melt it, and then you're going to make a very thin layer on the cotton. And it tells you how to lay that out, dry it, and everything else. Then you can use it kind of like a wax paper, which is what we used mostly before we came up with saran wrap and the other cling wrap type films. Project number 46 is how to make a zero pot, and that's the one that's a miniature refrigerator, miniature cooler. So you're going to take 2 pots, terracotta pots of basically different sizes. One fits inside the other, and then you're going to separate them a little bit. Then you're going to put in sand, a layer of sand in between the two, and to keep that sand moist. And so as the water evaporates from the moist sand, it will have a cooling effect for the terracotta parts. So that will keep things cool. Not below 40 degrees, which is where you have to keep things for refrigerated, but it will keep them from, away from the 120 degree or 110 degree Central Texas heat. So, and that's one of the tricks that the Native Americans also used in how they kept things cool, especially during hot times. And then you're going to cover it with a moist towel. And so then the evaporation process provides most of the cooling for that. On Project 47, it's about 2 pages long. It tells you the best way to freeze vegetables and fruits if you have the ability to freeze them and store them. So if you do have a small, let's say a 5 kW solar system or a 5 kW generator, and you have a small refrigerator freezer, this is how you could basically preserve some of your fruits and vegetables for freezing. And so it's a great idea, and it walks you through that. Project 48 is storing eggs without refrigeration. So it shows you basically how you can water bathe your eggs and have whole eggs basically preserved for quite a while. So, and then the next one, when we come back next week, we're going to be talking about pickling eggs. One of the things I want to do, remember last week we talked about pickling things in here. And so I now have this thing. One of my favorite things to eat is a Korean dish called gaktogi. So everybody's familiar with kimchi, which is basically their version. It's an Asian version, very spicy, of sauerkraut. So that's all it is. It's Napa cabbage that they turned into sauerkraut with very spicy red peppers and things like that. Well, they have a version of that they do with radishes, and they have the big white daikon radish, and they slice that very thin, and they ferment it and pickle it just like they do their sauerkraut, and they call it gaktogi. And that's one of my very favorite foods from Asia that is Korean gaktogi. That and bulgogi. Oh, speaking of which, we had a package that we bought at Walmart of it was a sauce that you just open it up and add it to your cooked meat, and it was for Mongolian beef. So we had Mongolian beef and green onions over rice this evening. It was fantastic. So a lot of these sauces and things that you can keep in packages for a little bit of time, that you can add to your meats, or even just add to the rice, are going to be phenomenal as far as eating in a post-apocalyptic world. So I can strongly recommend those. Did Gil make it in? I see somebody saying hi, Gil. So let me see here. Gil is there. Hello, Gil. Welcome. So Gil, I was out working in the garage earlier today, and water glassing. Thank you, Sumi. I said water bathing, water glassing. Thank you, Sumi. But anyhow, while I was out in the garage today, Gil, I thought of you when I came across these. So my old handkerchief, my old Boy Scout handkerchief, I found it. This is in a Foot Locker full of stuff that my sister gave me that had been at Mom's house in storage. This is the kerchief that we wore going to Philmont in 1968. And then, of course, after we completed it, then this is the kerchief that we wore coming home from Philmont in 68. And then I also found this thing out there. So just one of those old memories. How's that? So I thought you'd appreciate that. So now I got to find a safe place to hide those here in the house. And then I have all these other kerchiefs, just various kerchiefs and that became a trading item when you went to different jamborees and things like that. Was trading Order the Arrow patches and trading kerchiefs and trading other patches and camp patches and things like that. That became a really big thing that we really enjoyed. So Just thought I'd share that with you. Okay, so let me see where we are. Diana too, welcome. Good evening. No, you're fine. You're fine. You're with us. You're safe and with us, and that's what really counts. So let me see. So we're talking about sealing and canning, I would imagine. Oh, Theoxter's canned bacon last night. I watched it on Alaska Prepper, showed me how to can bacon. And so if Theoxter's is doing it, I guess I'm going to have to do it. I cannot find any Yoder's canned bacon anywhere. I did order, and I didn't keep track of who the order was. I guess I could go back in my charge card records, but I ordered a case of 12 cans of Yoder's canned bacon off of eBay and have never heard from the person since. And that was 2 months ago. So we'll see. But it's just the way it goes. Every once in a while, they're less than honest people that you get exposed to. Oh, wow. Yeah, and I understand. I was talking when I was a HR director at the Arch, the Austin Resource Center for the Homeless. Our chef who took care of all the feeding, his son was going to Philmont, and when he came back, we were talking. I guess Philmont has increased like 3 times in size from what it was when I was there, and just unbelievable how much stuff is going on there. Hello, Robin in Virginia. Welcome. Good evening. So that's pretty much it. Now, I would like to, as far as the book, and if you would like to, we can finish up the book this evening, and then kind of get preparation for our next book, which is going to be the James Wesley Rawles book, How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It, or we could keep on schedule and just do the last 4 chapters next week. That's probably the better thing to do, and just kind of shoot the poop here this evening. Theoxter still has his merit badge stash too. Yeah, yay. And I got a call this evening from NISA, the National Eagle Scout Association. And they wanted to make sure that all my information was correct. The only thing is they said that my board of review was in June of 67 for Eagle, and it wasn't. It was in Jan. So I think they had a U and an A. Instead of JAN, they had JUN in the records. So I had to correct that. But then they wanted to sell me that it's one of those things where I think it was more of a private company than Boy Scouts of America. They wanted to sell me the National Encyclopedia of Eagle Scouts and memories and everything else, and then I could have a personalized backpack, and there was all kinds of stuff with it. And it was only 2 equal payments of $199 plus the first payment of $100. So for $500, I could get my name included in the National Eagle Scout Association memorial book. And I said, nah, thank you. I'm retired. I'm on a fixed income. I don't spend money for things like that anymore. But anyhow, so in the news, let's talk about, I kind of want to talk a little bit about what Selko is talking about in his readings that I've read today. And I think it's important. And one of the things he talks about is eating in a post-apocalyptic world. And he was talking about it's difficult to tell the difference in what his family was eating. And there were usually more than 10 people in his home at any one time. And in Yugoslavia at that time, in the breakup of Yugoslavia, in the Balkan area, there's a tradition in Europe that is quite different than what we have here in the States. And I can kind of attest to it because it even existed in Germany. When we rented our apartment up in northern Germany and lived on the economy, there were only 30 Americans within 30 miles of us. And the Checkpoint Alpha, which is where he crossed over from West Germany into East Germany, had an MP company, but that was it. We had an MP company, we had my intercept platoon and intelligence collection platoon, and that was it. We had maybe 100 soldiers in that area of Northeast Germany, West Germany. And so we rented from a German family, and very typical of the German family, the basement was the family everything and storage for his business. The first floor was all business. So he was the town plumber. And then the second floor is where he and his wife lived. The third floor is where his parents lived, but they had passed away, so we were able to rent that apartment. And then the fourth and fifth floors of his apartment, of his building, were for his children. So the children actually lived, even after they got married, with him in that home. So it was a 6-story building, if you count the basement as being one of the stories. And but also in Europe, they have 100-year loans for your mortgage. So you don't have the 30-year mortgage like we do. You have a 100-year mortgage, and the oldest child, particularly the oldest male child, will typically inherit that mortgage when the parents pass on. So his son would inherit that house. And but anyhow, the family coalesces really well, and so and they also, it's considered dishonorable if you put your elderly family members into a state-run senior home, senior center, whatever. That it was considered an obligatory duty that you take care of your parents or your grandparents or uncles, great uncles, or whatever the case is. And so he constantly had 10 plus members in his home. And he said that it was difficult. They called it soup, but it was really nothing more than a tea. And sometimes that tea would be that they would go out and they would collect, hello, KP Heathen, welcome. They would collect bark from trees, or they would collect grass or leaves from the ground, and then they'd add it to boiling water, and that would be what they ate for a meal. And that they had to improvise very well on what it was they were eating. And he said that because of the fact that it was basically a civil war, snipers were active all the time. So you didn't want to move around too much during the daytime. Almost all your activities took place at night. And so getting your eyes adjusted to nighttime, and then the messing up your circadian rhythm by not having consistently good periods of sleep and being interrupted, sleeping during the daytime and things like that, it took a toll on you, both emotionally as well as physically. And so you were never at 100% of your physical, emotional capabilities because of the fact that you weren't sleeping like a normal human being. And then, of course, you add to that a deprived food system, and that even made it worse. And then he says, and just the stench of all the death that was surrounding his home, and the fact that the sewage system wasn't working. And so you had to, they had to go next doors. The family next doors all passed away. So they went next doors and basically made their home into the outhouse. They dug a pit in the backyard, and that became their outhouse. And even that, the smell of that being that close, one house away, was still enough to where it was really causing problems for them as they lived. And so he's bringing up all these factors into his writings that we really haven't sat down and said, you know what, all the things that we're accustomed to on a day-to-day basis are not going to be there in a really severe post-SHTF world. Especially if we lose the grid, we lose electricity, lose gasoline, lose food distribution, lose water distribution, water purification, water treatment, sewage or trash pickup. We aren't going to have 911 services. We won't have medical services. There's so many different things. We've got to take into account, how are we going to create all of that on a micro plane that we are losing in the macro society, but yet we depend on it so much. Just the other day, I was so grateful. Helen and I were sitting here, and we had that real bad thunderstorm. I think it was Saturday. It might have been Sunday. Really bad thunderstorm. All of a sudden, everything flickered. And, the TV went off, the computer went off, and all of a sudden it came back on. Well, everything came back on except for our 220 volt stuff. And so just as the 220 volt stuff did not come on, I got an email from Enphase. And Enphase are the people who basically report on, give me my reports over the internet as to the status of my solar system and my battery charging and everything else. He says, you are now operating on battery power. There is a power outage in your neighborhood. So we were about an hour and a half without air conditioning, the 220, and we were strictly on 120. So, I just started thinking, wow, we are so lucky to have what we have in comparison to all my neighbors who for an hour and a half had nothing. So, how are things going to be that different? Now, here's another thing that we have to take into consideration. And he was talking about the desperation of people. And so how many people, that's one of the reasons why I wanted my solar panel, my solar battery, put inside my garage. There are a couple of people in the neighborhood who have batteries and they're outside on the wall. I don't want that on the wall. I don't want people can see the solar panels, but I don't want them to see the battery because they know that the solar panels do not work when the grid is down. So the solar panels, most people get the solar panels and all it does is reduce the overall cost of the electricity because while the grid is up, it's supplementing the electricity is coming. You're reducing the amount that's coming into your house off the grid and you're using the difference with what's being produced by your solar panels during the daytime. During nighttime, you're not getting any reduction in anything. But if you have a battery, then when the grid goes down, you run off the battery. So, you do have that protection. So if you don't have a battery with your solar system and the grid goes down, you're SOL. You don't have any electricity. And so I don't want people to know I have a battery because then people will be coming over, right? So what are some of the things that we have to be more cautious of? And the article I was just reading just before we started tonight's episode was basically, what do you do when people come to your door? And people will come to your door, especially if they know you're a prepper. And I've been trying to get people to organize here for 3 years. So, and there's enough people who know I keep putting out the email, hey, we need to plan in case something happens. During Snowmageddon, I gave away small space heaters. And there's people that know that I'm prepared. And so how am I going to handle that when they start coming to my door? One of two things. I'm either going to try to help them to some extent and keep them as an ally, or I'm going to deny them and turn them into an enemy. If I turn them into an enemy, that's going to make them want to take what I have. Now, there's no guarantee that if I befriend them and try to take care of them, that they won't try to take what I have anyway. But it's kind of you've got to start thinking about these things. How are you going to handle it if the grid goes down or when SHTF happens? How are you going to handle the mediocre supply of food that you have to last you until you can get crops in? Do you have enough space to do the crops? Have you started practicing gardening? My potatoes were about ready to be dug up. We picked 2 tomatoes today, and they were really beautiful on the top, but on the bottom, they were rotten. They were black, almost like they had been touching the ground and gotten some sort of a ground rot on them. So, and I'm not an expert gardener at all, and this is a very shallow learning curve. It takes time. It takes a lot of time to build up to it. So those of you who have that knowledge and skill, I tell you what, I am envious because I am not a gardener. Little Lone Pepper says she read one of his books and it makes you take a look at it through a different perspective. Absolutely. And it makes you think about things that we haven't thought about. And he was a nurse, and so he was able to sell his medical knowledge and his medical skills, basically for other things. He says that the American perception of barter and what he experienced in Bosnia are 2 totally different things. That it's not going to be that easy, and we kind of overplay barter and being able to get it done. He said that they would spend days researching if somebody had something and then how do you arrange the meeting to do the barter? And then how do you know what they want? And how do you take enough to affect the trade, but not enough to make you a target to where other people are going to hit you, either going there or coming back for what you bartered for or what you're bartering with? And so there's all kinds of these intricate mechanizations that take place during this exchange, and making sure you have an overwatch who's, watching you so that you don't get jumped. And then it's just very, very intricate and well thought out. But this is all through experience, and not just those of us who are in the process now of theorizing what we think will happen. We need to learn from people like Furfal Aguirre, like Venezuelan prepper, like Selko Begovic, and find out what they lived through and apply that to our plans as we are planning to survive whatever it is that we're going to be going through. Oh, so me, let me tell you something. One of the things that I have learned is those of you who have your own septic systems, as long as you have water to flush it, you're going to be vastly light years ahead of the rest of us. It's going to be phenomenal. The more and more I read, for example, about, right now I'm reading this book, I think I showed you all, it's called Humanure. So I'm about, maybe 10% of the way through it. But basically, this has been done for thousands of years, where people took human manure and you turned it into compost and then used that to fertilize their gardens. I think I told you the story about in Germany, in southern Germany, they use human manure and they spread it on the sides of the hills right before the first snowfall. And then as the snow melts, it goes down into the earth and permeates the earth. And then that's what the cattle graze on. That fertilizes the grass for the cattle. And I was skiing the Rossfeld in Berchtesgaden, and came down and it looked like it was ice. And I got prepared to hit ice, and it wasn't ice, it was melted snow. And my skis hit it, and I just went face first into this pile of sewage that had been watered down with the melting snow. And I mean, I stank to high heaven. People did not want me on the bus going back down to the hotel. And I threw that snowsuit away. That was a really nice, expensive snowsuit. And I just could not get the smell out of it. And I ended up throwing it away. It was terrible. But anyhow, they've been using human manure as a fertilizer for thousands of years. And so I have a feeling that we're going to have to do the same thing in a post-apocalyptic world. Either that, or it's going to become, as it was at the Super Bowl, our Superdome in New Orleans after Katrina, it's going to become a cesspool of toxic waste that's going to bring about all kinds of diseases. So Theoxorus's generator was on auto start and auto exercise routine. That's great. That's true. I think you're going to have to wait probably at least a month, maybe 6 weeks before you start burning trash. And I probably would not do it any sooner than a month, and probably I'd wait at least 6 weeks before you start burning trash. Now, from an Azure standard, I'm getting a 55-gallon metal drum, and that's going to be my burn barrel. And then I'll have that out on the back. And actually, I've got an open field out there. And so I'm going to put that out in the open field. And then that way, you'll know that somebody in this area is burning trash, but you won't know particularly who in this area is burning trash. And if other people want to use it, that's fine. I'm willing to do that for the neighborhood. And I agree. You may have to pilot somewhere, but just make sure you pilot where you keep it as protected as possible from rodents and from wild animals. Coyotes, bears, eagles, vultures, falcons, they can find a scrap of food like you would not believe, the odor, and then they'll tear everything else up to get to it and spread that out. And then, of course, that would cause disease. So, the better you are at packaging it so that it can't be, so number one, you're masking the odor. And number two, so that you're making it impermeable to destruction by wildlife is going to be critical. So that may mean, covering it with a pallet or something, or canvas or something, just trying to keep it where it's not going to be readily accessible to most of wildlife. Sumi was looking into a solar battery setup, but didn't know how to manage the batteries in the winter. So that's all done basically for you if you get the right system. And so battery management becomes pretty good. Where I am concerned is if we have another snowmageddon. We had almost 2 weeks where we had, I was producing very little electricity because I had like 2 inches of ice on top of the solar panels. And then, of course, the sun was blocked by the clouds and everything else from the snow and the rainfall and the sleet and everything else. But cloud cover kept most of the sun from hitting the clouds, which means that the batteries under full, we reduced our what we were using our batteries for is primarily during the daytime for just freezer, refrigerator, and things like that. Maybe a coffee pot. Maybe we cheated there a little bit. But after about the second or third day, we were down to about 25% power in the batteries. And then I think it was on day 3, we started getting 4 hours and a day of electricity. And then about day 5, we started getting 8 hours. And that was 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the afternoon of electricity. Well, that 8 hours was sufficient to where it charged my batteries completely for the other 16 hours. So I imagine that in a grid down situation, if we have normal sunshine, that I will be producing enough electricity during the daytime to run almost everything, to include my coffee pot, to include my bread making machine, maybe even the microwave, and then store up enough in the batteries for any needs that I might have at nighttime. So one of the biggest concerns we have is being able to run a small 110 volt Black & Decker room air conditioning system, because summers here in Central Texas are brutal. 110 degrees with 40-50% humidity. Today it was 87 degrees and 85% humidity, and it was brutal. So it can get brutal here as far as heat. I'm more worried about cooling us than I am about warming us. I think we've got solutions in place for warming. But that's another thing that we need to take into consideration. And I think everybody needs to really take a look at. Am I that far behind? Is remember that it takes 6 months to cure wood in order for you to use it safely for a source of heat inside your home if you have a fireplace or out on the back porch with smokeless, I'm going to say smokeless, but less smoke environment. You want to cure it for at least 6 months. So now is the time to plan to get your wood, start collecting your wood and splitting it and seasoning it in preparation for November. Okay. So let me see where we are here. Shenanigans agrees, not a green thumb at all. I'm a black thumb. Let me see. Yes, there are DC voltage heating systems available. And they can run off your car battery. So, you can use the alternator in your vehicle to charge your battery as well. Let me see. I have, so if you officers, they're talking about security systems, one of the things I have to do is turn mine off. I have the perimeter alarm system, and if anybody comes into my perimeter, then a floodlight turns on. Well, I don't want to use that electricity once the grid goes down, so I'm going to turn the floodlights off. But I do want to have the silent alarm. But the other thing is that is web dependent, so all that reporting happens on the web. So I don't know if I'll have that available to me. So I may just have to turn my entire perimeter security system off. I don't know. We'll have to see how that works. I'll call the company and see if I can. Thank you for reminding me. and see if I can't find a way around that, because right now the solar system as well as my perimeter security system are both web-based programs. Hello, Devil Dog Prepper. Welcome. Good to see you. So Gil says his house in California, both houses in Idaho are uphill as far as the sewer line is concerned. Everyone is below us if poop flows downhill. That's absolutely true. So you kind of have a neighbor version of a cesspool, huh? Or septic tank, I'm sorry. So Gil says everybody has burn barrels and they make use of them all the time. Yes. And typically in a rural environment here in Texas, I would say the same thing applies. Gil, you're doing your Tuesday night right after this, right? Like in 10 minutes. So if you are, would you do me a favor and make sure everybody has? I am so sorry. I watched last night's video all over again. I was recommending channels and I failed to recommend yours. I apologize for that. I got to learn. I have to learn that sometimes when you start listing off things, you can do the best of intentions, and you inadvertently or accidentally leave off other great things that you need to also include in that list. So I strongly recommend everybody subscribe to Gray Man Prepping. Gil has a great channel. I really enjoy what he has to do. And so I strongly recommend that you do that. And I also recommend that if he does have a live after this one this evening, and I think he's changing his time as well. I think that starting tomorrow, he's going to be going to where he's on right before us instead of right after us. And so that'll give him a little bit more time to participate. But anyhow, Gil, please put that link if you are on this evening. Yes, I've been watching that. And just phenomenal, some of the things. And Mr. Hollerman gives some fantastic insights. I strongly recommend that. There's 2 different 1-hour sessions of Canadian Prepper interviewing Jonathan Hollerman. If you'll remember, we did his book, Grid Down, and the one he gives away for free on his website. We did a review of that here, I think back in January. But phenomenal information. I strongly recommend that you go to Canadian Prepper and visit both hours of that interview with Jonathan Hollerman. Fantastic interview. I touched my mouse. Something happened. I don't know what happened. It took me off. So let me. Yeah, and I also want to have chargers for my radios, so that any of my perimeter guards in our group can report back in. So I bought the what's the name of the company? There's a company on Amazon that does the FRS family radio service. 10 radios for $200, basically $20 a radio, and they come with charging stations. So my plan is I'll have one and then pass 4 out, one for basically each corner of the neighborhood. And they can have that, and it can basically last for 24 hours, even if you don't transmit on it. Then they bring those 4 back, and I'll give them the other 4 that I've charged. So I've got 5 in the charger units all the time, and I've got 5 out, me being one of those 5. And we can have constant communications. Now, one thing Jonathan Hollerman pointed out in this discussion with Canadian Prepper is you don't want to be on the radio for a couple of reasons. Number one, you don't want to, that's going to tell a broader area that there are people out here who are doing things, and then number two, it's going to attract them to you. And then the other thing is that it's going to cause them to do a lot more of an investigation before they come to see you than they normally would have. So you would have had the element of surprise. So the less you talk on the radio, the better off you're going to be. Uh, Oh, that's great. But you receive a lot more snow than we do. And we don't really receive that much snow. We receive more ice than we do snow. Uh, Way to go, shenanigans. Great plan. Let me see here. Um, I have to go back to the old ways, lots of layers and bed warmers at night. Absolutely. And I did a video on that a little while, maybe a year ago. And what you want to do is create what they call a microcosm. So that's the old, canopy bed. And the whole reason behind that was not modesty, but you had curtains around it and you had a canopy over the top of it. And that created basically a small room inside the room so that your exhalations and your body heat and everything else only warmed up the space right there inside your bed. And you didn't have to worry about warming up the entire room. So it conserved all your body heat into a rather small area. So the same thing. If you really want to, and in Russia, the kitchen becomes the family room in the winter, and everybody sleeps in the kitchen because that's where you have your oven, your stove, and everything else. And grandma, as a matter of fact, the babushka, has a space right above the oven, and that's where she sleeps because babushka was most cantankerous and exposed to the cold. So they would give her the warmest place or the place of honor on the oven, above the oven, to sleep during the winter. But so you want to create a microcosm. You want to get as small an area that you're either cooling or heating as possible, and that will conserve a lot of your energy. All right, so the topic tonight is RV solar power. Great, and that's going to be in about 8 minutes. So we'll all head over there when that's done. Of the two shenanigans, if you're cutting down pines and oak, I would prefer the hardwood, the oak, over the softwood, the pine, as far as burning. So, yeah, I don't know what it is with this mouse, but it does its own thing. So let me see if there's anything else. Yes, absolutely, shenanigans. A tent, in a kid's tent, a camping tent, something like that, either on your bed or on the ground. Now, here's another secret. When you're trying to create the microcosm, put as much space between you and the earth as possible. So what you really want is you want more bedding underneath than you want on top. Okay, you want to separate the coolness of the earth away from you. So the more bedding and insulation you can have between the earth and you, the better off you are. And then you can get by with just a couple blankets on top. So if you have a good mattress or whatever, and then you have a wool blanket or a whoopee, I can't tell you. In Germany, in the heat of the winter, I had a whoopee, which is the Army. It's officially called a poncho liner, but it's the lightest of the sleeping bag system. And it's basically the size of a poncho, I guess, which is why they call it a poncho liner. There's no hole for a poncho. But I slept with that for 3 years in the barracks in Germany, that and a wool blanket. And I was very comfortable. So, I would say get at least an 80% wool blanket and a whoopee, and you'll probably that'll probably be as good as a 0-degree sleeping bag. Let me see. All right. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes till. Why don't I go ahead and give you all a chance to get a potty break and meet you over at Gil's live in about 5 minutes. And I'll leave the link up here. Hopefully I'll have a warning since I'm subscribed. Hopefully I'll have a warning where I can just click on it and go straight to it. So in the meantime, we'll shut this down for tonight. Next Tuesday night will be our last night. We'll do the last 4 projects and the last 4 accumulations for food storage for preppers. So don't forget the last 4 things you want to purchase in order to get up to where you want to be with the maximum of what we're getting for this food storage plan is you're going for next week, you're going to get 5 pounds of honey, 20 pounds of sugar, 8 cans of tomato soup, and 50 pounds of flour or wheat. Okay, so remember that we're all in this together, so we can come out the other side together. And thank you for your support. God, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. Be kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because togetherness is the key. And the Lord said, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. See you over at Gil's Live in about 5 minutes. Take care, everybody. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.